So let me just take a minute to welcome everybody. Let me welcome you to this week's Future Trends Forum. I'm delighted to see and hope we get to hear from you as we go today. We have a great topic with a whole crew of wonderful guests. But before we go further, let me introduce the forum. Let me explain where it came from and how it works, and then we'll dive in. So first of all, you should know that the Future Trends Forum is a weekly video conference where we dive into the future of higher education, usually with the help of one or more awesome guests and in conversation with everybody in the community who signs on. Now, this is a conversation-based situation. This is all about discussion and the exchange of ideas. Now, this springs out of something related but very different. The Ftt Report is a monthly trends analysis that follows almost 90 major trends across education and technology. It comes out every month. It's a PDF format, usually up to about 100 different footnotes, and it covers a lot of ground. If you haven't seen that, just go to ftte.us and you can learn more. Now, the Ftt Report and this Future Trends Forum are both part of a broader project called the Future of Education Observatory. So this is a multimedia, participatory, ongoing effort to try to grapple with the future of education and technology. If you haven't seen that, just head to futureofeducation.us and you can get links and more information about the book club that we run, our little bookstore, the blog that gets a lot of traffic, as well as the forum and the Ftt Report. Now, all of this work can only be done with the help of some very generous supporters. And before I go further, I'd like to thank them. So to begin with, I'd like to thank NYSERNet from New York State, a nonprofit that helps that state's colleges and universities get online and do terrific stuff with broadband and networking technology. We're grateful to them for their support. We're also grateful to Shindig, because as you can tell, Shindig makes available this technology we're using right now. So before we go any further, let me just explain the technology and how it works. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, the technology works with some similarities to other video conferencing platforms and then some unique specialties. So to begin with, where I am right now and where this slide is, just for a minute, is called the stage. And it's called that because everyone involved in this conversation can see and hear everything on stage. And this is where the guest will be in just a minute. And this is where you can be as well. And I'll show you how to do that. Now, right below us, you can see a whole bunch of different people. You can see a whole bunch of different silhouettes. You can see some of them as individual video feeds. And those all represent one or more people each who have signed up from somewhere in the world. They will all have some information about them from their login. And so if you'd like to talk with them privately, you can simply double click on their icon. And if they want to talk to you, your two icons can click together like Legos. You can have your own private audiovisual conversation. Now, if you'd like to participate in the broader conversation, there are actually 3 ways of doing it. And you can find them all located at the very bottom of the screen. So go to the bottom of the screen, you'll see a white strip running along it. And it has a whole series of icons. On the left edge, you'll see a number along with a silhouette of what looks like some people. The number I've got right now is 41. If you click on that, 2 windows will pop up. The one on the left will give you a kind of film strip view of all the people who are participating right now, which is handy. On the right is a chat box, and this lets you have a basic text chat with the roughly 17 or so people who've logged in with you. We kind of segment these out by rooms based on when you log in. Then the text chat is a good way to toss around ideas. People often share links to resources that come in the course of our conversation. And it's also a good place for people to start thinking about topics they'd like to ask about. Now, back to that white strip. You can see next to the number, you can see a question mark in a circle. Now, if you click that, up will pop a little box that will let you type in a comment or a question. And that's one that I can then read out loud for everyone to hear. I can flash it on the screen so everyone can see it. That's really handy if you can't do audiovisual right now. Now, if you can do audiovisual, I mean, if you're in a place like I am right now where you can talk freely and your microphone and camera are working, go back to that white strip. You'll see a button with a raised hand on it. Click that, and that'll tell us that you want to join us up here on stage. And when the time is right, I'll hit the right button, and up you'll join us right here. So there'll be a guest, there'll be myself, and there'll be you. And you can ask your questions and make your comments to your heart's content. If that sounds complicated, it's actually really easy to do, and we do this every week. So you can join us in video. You can click the question mark to type in a text question, and we already have 2 questions already queued up, or you can chat away. Now, if that isn't enough in the way of conversational affordances, head over to Twitter and you can just tweet using the hashtag FTTE. And people there often like to ask questions or make comments or tweet out at other people. And we've already got the wonderful Roxanne Riskin, who's already tweeting about this even as I speak, which is fantastic. So those three options here, plus Twitter, it's all about conversation. It's all about communication. And we're really grateful to Shindig for making available this platform so we can do that. Now, we're also grateful to our supporters on Patreon. If you don't know Patreon, it's a crowdfunding site that lets people collaboratively fund and support an ongoing project. It's like GoFundMe or Kickstarter. In this case, it's our effort to explore the future of education and technology. So if you go to patreon.com/Brian Alexander, you'll see a lot of different ways that you can contribute as little as $1 a month to make sure that we keep the lights on and the machines humming. We're really grateful to all the people who have been supporting us. You can see here on the screen people who are super supporters, people like Bob Johnson, Chris Lott, and Laura Almer. We're really grateful to them for their support, as well as for everybody who has joined us lately. So thank you. Now, that's who supports us, and that's what the forum is all about. Now, in order to begin our conversation, I'm going to bring on one of our guests. So to begin with, I should explain this is a little bit of an unusual session. We have not one, not two, but several different people all working on adaptive learning technology. Some of them worked on a program at University of Mississippi called Plato, and we're going to bring them all up on stage to be able to talk to us and explain what they've done in all their work. So this is a great time to talk about adaptive learning. So the first one I'd like to bring up is Patricia O'Sullivan. Patricia, is it okay if I call you Patty?
Yes, I prefer that. Thank you, Brian.
Oh, delighted, Patty. Let me just read your title off. Patty is the manager of personalized learning and adaptive teaching opportunities program, as well as an instructor of ethics and pharmacy administration, and for all I know, running the entirety of the University of Mississippi. Welcome, Patty. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Brian.
Well, listen, I'm so glad you can be here because adaptive learning is such a fascinating technology with so much potential that we're not just glad to have someone here who can think about it, but someone who has been working on it as well. So before we dive into that, let me just give you a quick question to ask. What are you going to be working on yourself for the next year? What can you tell us that will let us know more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so our university is part of a cohort of 8 institutions. We all received a grant through the Personalized Learning Consortium at the APLU 3 years ago to implement adaptive courseware and scale it in our general education curriculum, mainly with the intent to benefit disproportionately students who are underserved. So Pell-eligible students, minority students, first-generation students. So we've been doing that work for about 2.5 years together. And now we are moving into the second phase of the grant, which is administered by Every Learner Everywhere. They used to be the Digital Learning Solutions Network. And they're a collaboration of 14 organizations that are hoping to bring what we've done at these 8 public institutions to 2-year and 4-year institutions across the country. Their goal in the next 4 years is to bring adaptive learning technologies to about 250
friends, if you're new to the Future Trends Forum, every session begins with me asking these poor, hapless guests a few tormenting questions. But then the best thing is everybody in the room gets to ask their questions. So as you hear from our guests, as they reveal to you what they're thinking, what they're working about, please feel free to use those 3 buttons at the bottom of the white strip to ask your questions. Think in part about any projects you may be working on at your institution or any projects that you're thinking about working on in the future. Before we do that, let me just ask you, Patty, to clarify a couple of quick things. First of all, what are the 8? What are the other? You said 8 institutions. Who are the other 7 besides Ole Miss?
Oh, you put me on the spot. Okay, University of Louisville, Georgia State University, Portland State University, Oregon State University. I think some of those folks are here today with us. Colorado State University. Arizona State University and
Yeah.
Northern Arizona University.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, let me see if I can bring up one of your colleagues. And let me just emphasize again that this is a multi-campus, multi-state project, which has an awful lot of different people involved. And the source of the funding for this was WCET, right?
The money originally comes from the Gates Foundation. So for the first
Ah,
phase of the grant, the grant was managed by the Personalized Learning Consortium at the APLU, the Association of Public Land Grant Universities. The second phase of the grant is also funded by the Gates Foundation, but it's being managed by Every Learner Everywhere.
understood. Understood. So this is a pretty elaborate collaborative project.
It is. And that's why it's so exciting to be part of that. We tend to be siloed at universities, not only in our own departments, but just as institutions we're siloed. So it's really exciting to be part of work that connects so many institutions and different kinds of institutions across the country.
Now, they're all public land grant, but they have a wide range of functions and strategies and emphases. Well, that's great to know. Hang on for 1 second. Well, I'm going to bring up one of your collaborators from across the whole area, and let me see if I can. I have to imagine I'm like a pianist working 1,000 different keys at once. So let me bring up Sarah Clark, because this is quite a crew of folks. So, Sarah, greetings. Oh, may have a connection issue. Let's give her a second to reconnect. So there's a dramatic pause where this can happen. She may be having a connection issue. Let me try one more time. Hello, Sarah, are you there? Okay, I think she's starting to have an issue. Say, Sarah, there you are. Can you hear and see us?
Yes, I can.
Excellent.
Yay.
Yes, fantastic. Welcome aboard. Welcome to the Future Trends Forum. Where are you today, Sarah?
I am in Corvallis, Oregon.
Oh, nice. Now, I'm going to assume it's cloudy and or raining. Am I right?
No, it's beautiful. It's going to be 74 degrees. It's lovely.
What? Wow. Enjoy it now. Enjoy it as you can. So, Sarah, we've just been talking with Patty, who's introducing herself and starting to talk about the work that your collaborative is doing. Let me ask you, as a way of introducing yourself, as a math instructor and also as an advisor, what are you going to be working on for the next year?
Well, we started our project, our APLU Adaptive Learning Project, with college algebra, and we have started to the course prior to college algebra. So we've been running our course for 2 years now, actually. And so part of what we need to do during the summer is looking at our materials, revising, making sure everything is working well. We're also really starting to dig more into the data with, how students are doing, how they're doing in subsequent courses. So those are things we're starting to look at. And, ways that we can use adaptive courseware to, get that maybe don't have the best background, more disadvantaged students, how we can use the adaptive courseware to help get them up to speed more. So those kinds of things.
That sounds great, and like a lot of work. Let me ask, are you involved as a content expert because you have a background in math instruction, or are you involved as well as a digital expert, or both?
A little bit of both. Our team started as a team of 7 instructors, and we, took the content of Math 111, kind of threw it out the window, reconfigured it, put it back together. I was also put on the team because I was at the time the expert on our adaptive courseware platform that we use.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. Good for you. You get to become amphibian, playing both roles at the same time. Well, listen, let me, before we go further, we have some questions starting to crop up. So let me just quickly ask, when I learned about all of your work, I was told about Plato. at Ole Miss. Now, is Plato the name of software, or is that an ongoing strategy and program?
That's just the name that we gave to the unit that we developed to house the grant. So it's personalized learning and adaptive teaching opportunities. It was just we just wanted to come up with some goofy little name to, rather than calling it the APLU grant.
Plato is fine. Plato
works.
So then let me ask, to drill down, again, one of my jobs as host is to ask the basic questions. We're talking about software that helps students, in a particular case that you're talking about, Sarah, to learn college algebra. Can you just quickly tell us at the top level, how does this work? Is this like the SAT test, which will, give you questions based on your previous answers so far, or how does it actually work?
That's pretty much how it works. So we, at the beginning, set up our course in our adaptive courseware, and we add all of the topics and things that we want, and we put them in order and make them assignments. But when the students first log in, it gives them a test, and it asks, it just starts them with a question, and then based on the answer to that question, it gives them something harder or something simpler, and it starts to figure out, okay, here's the areas where the students know things, here's where they need to have a little bit work, or here's where they really need to review. So it sets up a personalized path for each of our students. But we do also have it set up that each week we need to make sure they have certain topics done. So there is a prescribed path through our course, but how many things our students have to do depends on how they do on that initial assessment that they take.
I see. Live as either a web app or as a back-end access through a web interface?
We use a publisher software, and yeah, it's our students access it through our learning management system, and it's all single sign-on for them. So they do have to click a button to get into it, but they get it right from our course.
So they're not leaving to go someplace else to run some other software. Instead, it's organic and integral to the LMS experience.
Yeah. There is a button that kind of takes them out to the other program, but yeah, it is all online. So it does feel like it's all within the course, though. So.
Very good. Thank you. And friends, if you have questions that you would like to ask at that level of what the heck are we talking about, please feel free. I want to make sure that nobody here is embarrassed. We have a stack of questions, and I want to just pop them up right now. So to begin with, let me bring up one from the wonderful Michael Haggins, who asks, to what extent do you believe or know through research that adaptive learning achieves Bloom's one-on-one performance advantage and is scalable? So I'm going to flash on the screen one more time in case you didn't get to read the whole thing. Do you want me to read that again? To what extent do you know or believe through research that adaptive learning achieves Bloom's one-on-one performance advantage and is scalable? So it's referring to his Six Sigma research.
Sarah? I'll just say that we're still in the early stages of research with adaptive learning. And we're also in the early stages of companies really developing it. The Gates Foundation invested pretty heavily through their courseware challenge. I think it's called the Next Generation Courseware Challenge. And that initial grant was 5 years ago. I believe they've re-upped that. So they're investing in companies, like Sarah referenced a publisher content. Some publishers are involved in this, but they're investing in the companies to make sure that these systems are doing just that they are working within the confines of learning science to be effective learning systems. The research on whether or not it's effective in achieving what we're hoping it's going to achieve, we have more results in the K-12 disciplines. So that might address, the question about Bloom. these systems most certainly can help students with memorization, with recall through delayed recall. But so I have two colleagues here with me today, Karen Forget and Guy Krieger. They developed adaptive learning modules in English composition. So it's not for students to learn, memorization, but really applications to their writing, and they've had some success in that. So I don't know if Sarah, you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, I agree with you that there's not a whole lot of research, and like we're still trying to figure out how well it's working here, because that is one of the things that we're wanting to look at is how are our students doing in subsequent courses. We know how our students are doing in our college algebra.
Right.
Right. Our DFWs have gone down significantly since DFW is D's and F's and withdrawals from our course have gone down significantly in college algebra since we've started this.
Wow.
So we know at least for the course that it's in, it's working, it's helping. But yeah, of course, we want to see how they're doing as they go forward.
Well, that's a huge signal achievement to be able to say that DFWs have gone down. That's terrific. Bravo.
Yeah, college algebra is the highest failed college course in the country, and so that is not the highest failure rate course at Oregon State anymore. So,
well, that's it's definitely a popular and terrifying class for a lot of people. Speaking of which, we have a good question here from Sierra Adare Tasiwupa, and please, Sarah, if I mispronounced you, I forgive me. She asks, where can we find out more about this publisher software? Which software is it? What are we talking about?
So at Oregon State, we use Alex. It's a McGraw-Hill product. We chose that as our online platform for homework because we started with it as our math placement test. And it's really nice for a math placement test because the students can take a math placement test, and then Alex has learning modules that they can work on so they can improve their placement. So, you have a lot of students that come in and they haven't had math in the last 2 years of high school, or they've been out of high school for a while. And we were noticing that it was really helpful for students, and actually they were performing well in the courses that were placed on the learning modules. So we started using it in our developmental math courses, and then when the APLU grant came around, it was the natural fit to say, okay, we like this one, let's use it.
And I'll just add to that to say that there's lots of different softwares available. So the publishers certainly have their own in-house software. Sometimes publishers partner with a company that specifically does the digital learning platform for them. So Pearson was working with Newton for a while, that they had that kind of partnership. But then there are also companies that have adaptive learning platforms that are content agnostic. They will let you build a course within it with your own content, or you can take OER content. You can use content, say, from OpenStax and put it into their platform. So just to say that there's lots of variety. It's not just the publishers who are doing this. It's lots of different companies, and I know that can be really confusing. How do I figure out what's best for me? Because they don't all do the same thing. EdSurge has a really good tool called the Product Index, and it helps people kind of whittle down. It has a filter saying, well, this is the kind of functionality I want in these kinds of products, and then it has links directly to the websites for the companies that make those products. So that's a helpful guide. And then there's the courseware and context guide that also helps, and that's available at Every Learner Everywhere on their website. But that's also a guide to, once you're kind of looking at these products and you're maybe doing demos, just again to kind of help you decide between products, which product is the best fit for my. One of the things that we found is that most, at our institution anyway, at the University of Mississippi, most of the products we're using are publisher based, and it's because faculty are choosing the textbook first, and then they just choose the adaptive courseware that goes along with the textbook. I'm not sure that's the best approach, because then the software doesn't always fit with, doesn't have the functionality that they need for their class. So like Sarah was saying, they'd already been using Alex in a particular, for their math placement. So that seemed like a good fit, to go with the courseware first and then choose a textbook after that. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that it's not just publishers who are doing this.
Oh, this is fascinating. I mean, so really, you're talking about a whole ecosystem of multiple bits of content, all kinds of different moving parts, from commercial publishers to nonprofit content aggregators like OpenStax to the individual, in this case, multiple universities.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm just going to give a shout out to my colleagues, Karen and Guy. They've worked with Lumen Learning to create models for English composition, and they might want to explain it better, but correct me if I'm wrong, you started maybe with some OpenStax content and then revised it yourselves. So I don't know, Brian, if you wanted to put one of them up to explain that.
Sure. I'm sorry. Should I bring up, let's see, should I bring up Lynn?
Yeah, Karen Forget.
Okay, let me see if I can grab Karen. Hang on one second. This gets to, while I'm bringing them up, we have another question that is actually, I think I've got one. Karen Forget. Oh, excellent. Let me just bring you up right now. Let's see. We can have all four of us up here. It'll take a second. We need a drum roll. Hello, Karen.
Hi, Brian.
Good to see you. Thank you for coming.
Good to see you too. Just to kind of speak to Patty's point, to give you a sense of what we did, which is very different from what they're doing in Oregon. We used the Lumen software to build a very locally contextualized sort of personalized learning courseware to address the readiness gaps that we often see in first-year composition, particularly at an institution like ours, which serves our state and then a wide range of students who come from out of state as well. Sure. And so because we understand our students and we understand the kind of information that some of them come in with about rhetorical strategy and rhetorical content, but lots of them don't come in with, we decided what we would do is poll our teachers and say, where are those readiness gaps that you see? What kind of rhetorical content, what kind of strategies do you see those gaps in? And what is the stuff that you really don't want to cover in the classroom, but you know students need to learn? And so based on what they told us, Lumen helped us build very short, what we call micro modules that cover in very student-friendly ways with interactive activities, basic content and strategies in rhetoric. And our students who come in who are less prepared use them as a way to learn this content and strategies. And our students who are well prepared use them as a way to refresh their understanding of these. And then as instructors, we use them to help us understand for those strategies that aren't showing up in the students' writing, in their papers, we use the courseware itself to tell us, do they really understand this strategy? Can they answer questions about this strategy? And if it's not showing up in their papers, how can we help them apply that? So we found it to be very successful for our students. The kind of feedback that we get from our students is, because we're writing teachers, is written feedback through the things that they tell us and the way that we serve it. But I think all of our students have found it helpful in terms of our students who use it for refreshers material, and in terms of our students who really had never been exposed to this before.
Oh, this is amazing. So among other things, Karen, you brought us up a completely different discipline. So you brought in composition and writing. So the adaptive learning projects you're talking about really covered two very different disciplines, one from the humanities and one from the sciences, one from STEM.
And I would say in composition, and this is not work that is intuitive to Congress or to our field, because we do base our assessment on their papers, on their writing. And so
Right.
for us, it was sort of thinking about what personalized learning could offer in terms of our courses, and almost backwards design in thinking, how could this help us? And that's how we ended up with the idea of, there is content in a writing course, it's just not usually assessed. And what this courseware allows us to do is to assess, do they have a basic understanding of the content, even if they can't apply it in their papers? And that's kind of been the new spot for us as composition instructors.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I could tell you stories. When I was a grad student at Michigan in the 90s, I was part of the writing assessment program, so we could talk about that. But it's interesting that what you're describing and what both Patty and Sarah are describing on the college algebra side is how crucial assessment is to adaptive learning. That's the piece that makes it go. Let me get meta again for 1 second. The excellent Michael Haggins asked a question to follow up on this, which was, let me just bring this up on the screen for everyone to see it. Which is, do you think, are there some disciplines that are not adaptable to adaptive learning?
Clever.
I mean, it is clever. You just described a very qualitative set of disciplinary learnings. Are there others that you would rule out? Philosophy, astrophysics?
I'll tell you that I use it to teach an ethics class. And I found it helpful in that we can flip the class. And so the content, basically the textbook is delivered through the platform, and students do readings on it. They are asked understanding questions, some application questions, and they are supposed to complete those modules ahead of coming to class, so that when they come to class, they're ready to discuss those particular concepts. And we do active learning, so they're given case studies, they're given ethical dilemmas that they work out together in teams of 3. And so I found the courseware useful in that sense. So is it the adaptivity that matters so much in ethics? Maybe not, but just having a digital learning platform that can deliver the content and assess how students are understanding the reading, and can they apply those concepts to application questions in the reading, just to make sure that when they get to class, they're prepared. So I would have thought, before getting involved with Karen and Guy's project, that, English composition might be one of those that wouldn't apply, but they've applied it beautifully. And I see other applications in the humanities where people are using it. I know the inclination is usually for STEM fields to use adaptive courseware. But I can't think of a discipline that wouldn't use it.
Wow. Well, that's a great answer. We have questions that are piling up all over the place. So let me just bring up Rachel. So hang on 1 second. So beam her up on stage. And let's see. Oh, Rachel's video is off. Wait, there you are.
Yay!
Hello.
Hi.
Where are you, Rachel?
I am in the woods in Washington, D.C.
Oh, fantastic.
Because where else should I be talking about the future of education but technology than from the woods?
Wow.
So my question you've actually been touching on, which is what is the future of edtech of adaptive learning for the humanities? Because so much of the work has been done in STEM, and that's for a variety of reasons, both content and I think human resource. So my question is really, how can we encourage the humanities to embrace the flipped model that allows the content transmission to happen at home, so that the classroom environment becomes this very robust environment?
Oh, terrific question. Of course.
I mean, I guess it's just a matter of getting faculty involved with it and showing them how it can be done. I mean, like I said, before I had seen Karen and Guy's project, I never would have thought you could have used it for English composition. But after seeing how they've done it, I'm sold. So I don't know. Maybe the answer is to show faculty these applications so they can use it in their own classes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say that patience is going to be key, because before we got to how we understood how it could work in composition, we had a lot of failed projects. And, first we thought very large, we're going to cut across, kind of in the MOOC model, we're going to try for that. It just didn't work well in our discipline, because even though writing seems like, particularly first year writing, seems like it would be very consistently taught across institutions, it really is not. And so it was when we kind of made that leap, but it wasn't a leap, it was kind of a step backwards into locally, how could we use this and how would it benefit our students? What is it that our students need and how could we use it to benefit them? That's when we actually got a project that we felt was successful.
Thank you very much. And full disclosure, I'm currently in Brian's Studies in Education Technology class at Georgetown, so I'm a bit of a plant. So thank you all for this wonderful conversation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. That's a big plant behind you, actually.
Yeah, well, I know.
So we have questions coming in all over the place, and Rachel is a fantastic student, an absolute delight to have in class. Let's bring up a question from the wonderful, stalwart fan of the forum. Let's bring up Roxanne Riskin. Hello, Roxanne.
Hey. Hi, thanks, Brian. Hi. I have a couple of things in my mind, because you mentioned this type of experience for your students to go through a session or like a course module that's written based on the textbook that was prescribed. Am I getting the right gist of what you're offering?
Are you talking about our course or are you talking about the algebra course?
Anything. Am I on the right track for understanding?
Right. Well, I can explain to you how it's done in our course.
Like for module type of courses that
right.
you're writing.
Yeah. So in our course, we designed these modules, in fact, work with the projects that the students were working on. And so as the students, for example, are working on their argument project, they're also working in the courseware on the kind of rhetorical content and strategy that's associated with argument projects. And so the course is aligned for us in that way. That is, the project is aligned with the material that's in the courseware. And I think that is actually part of the reason that students find it so helpful, because as they're working on their argument paper, they're also working on those kind of strategies that make arguments most effective within the courseware. And I think they really see the parallel between that. I think Patty has found in a lot of her research that it's alignment between the courseware and the work that the students are doing in class that students find most satisfying. And Patty, you can probably talk about that a little more.
Yeah, so we've been interviewing students. We've had over 25 focus groups, and we do a survey at the end of every semester. We've been doing that for 2 years. And yeah, the biggest complaint students have about the way these digital learning platforms are integrated is that they may be attached to a textbook, but it's a textbook that the faculty rarely refer to. They might lecture on their own notes. The high stakes exams are based on classroom notes. So the students will say, I feel like I'm in two different courses. There's the online version of the course, which aligns the courseware with the textbook. And then there's the lecture part of it. And so that I would call the faculty seem to be only using the courseware as a homework or quizzing platform or as a supplement. It's not a very good integration. Students get very frustrated with that. On the other hand, I've seen some really brilliant implementations, and generally it's when the courseware is not tied to a textbook. So for my course, I said the word textbook, but really it was third-party content that I put together plus my own content into the courseware. But I have, on our campus, we have an engineering faculty member who built his own course in a software called Smart Sparrow, and the students love it because of the alignment is so tight, and students, when they are using a textbook that's mass produced. And I'm not trying to come off as anti-publisher or anti-textbook, but just the reality is that when a faculty member chooses a textbook, they don't necessarily want all the content in there. And then if the textbook aligns with particular courseware, they don't want all of the modules in the courseware. So that's some teaching slalom style, right, where you're just avoiding certain chapters, and it's very frustrating for students. So yes, some of the best implementations are when everything aligns exactly, and the students are applying, like Karen said, the students are applying what they're learning in the courseware directly in class, particularly in active learning classrooms or classes like Karen's writing, where they've got a project that they're working on.
Now, is this what would you align your learning modules with competency-based learning? Because Brian, we've talked about that in the past. And also, are there types of personalized learning analytics that you're pulling from the knowledge checks that you're offering or are presenting to the students? How are you doing your I know, I'm sorry I'm going on and on, but it's so,
No, these are great questions. I'm actually going to bounce that to Karen, the learning analytics, because you just recently had David Wiley from Lumen Learning in to do some deep dive analytics. And maybe you want to pull Guy up too for that.
Yeah, and actually, Guy is actually probably better able to speak to this.
Thank you, Roxanne. You're awesome. Let me find Guy while you start speaking.
Okay, great. And just to give you a little preface for Guy, the way that we use the learning analytics may be very different from the way that other courses using personalized learning analytics use them. So this is pretty specific for
were aligned exactly with the lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy. As Karen explained, we're not using adaptive or personalized in the actual writing of products. We're looking at how students how knowledgeable they are in terms of strategies and approaches to those projects. So that's why we're looking at the lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So in terms of analytics, the lineup with our course outcomes, and what we're able to do then is take the data at the end of the semester, data for the moment, and determine how well students are doing on particular outcomes within these modules based on the assessments we provide. And so, as Patty said, we just had David Wiley from Lumen out here. One of his new projects is it's called RISE analysis, and what this is a measure of analytics and a continuous improvement of the analytic, continuous improvement of the product based on the analytic data that's provided. So, for instance, what we just did is David and his folks pulled the data from our fall 2018 semester. And as we suspected, a lot of that data fell in where we hoped students were being challenged by the project or by the products that they were working on, but they were doing pretty well on them. Some of the data show that there were outliers. In other words, problems with how the content was written or the questions that students were being asked. And so we were able to use the analytics to hold a little faculty workshop where David and his people came in. And we are able to go in and determine what content is causing problems for students, work through that content and improve it, make it clearer, more understandable, whatever the case may be for particular questions. And then roll out a new version of the course. So with all the improvements that we just made and stuff that we'll do over the summer, we'll be able to roll that out in the fall and measure how students do with that versus how they did in previous semesters, and make sure that the analytics are telling us what students need help with, what they aren't understanding, those kind of things.
And Guy, just before we proceed further, you're also at Ole Miss, right?
Yes.
Oh, very good, very good. And you're the Writing 101 curriculum chair.
Yeah. So we have, as with a lot of larger state schools, we have many, many sections. So we have people who oversee the courses. And so at our campus, we have, about 100 sections or so in the fall. And so, which is good because a large number of the faculty, and so we're able to get their voices in on what they're looking for and where there might be problems. So it's a combination of things, and the data, the analytics, certainly in the middle of this, but a lot of information that helps us with the initial rollout of this type of project, but then also continually improving what we're doing.
And just to follow up, if I could, Brian, on the learning analytics, the APLU hosted a big data caucus back in December where they brought together program managers from the 8 institutions in the adaptive courseware grant project, some vendors, just to talk about how we're using the learning analytics and how they can improve on them. In our surveys, we found that faculty weren't really using the learning analytics. Karen and Guy's team definitely are, but the faculty in general weren't necessarily. And part of it was they said they had really large classes. They didn't have time to look through the learning analytics to intervene with particular students. So we wanted to go back to the vendors and tell them, faculty are finding it difficult to even get to this data. Is there a way that we can make this easy for them? Just like the 3-second rule. I could just click a button and in 3 seconds I can see who's having trouble, or I can see which learning objectives students are struggling with. So that was the faculty end of it. And most of the courseware is pretty good about this. It'll let students know where they're having trouble, where they need to self-remediate, even things like the progress bar the students talk about. I just want to know how much longer I have to do this. But so that students are more self-directed in their learning. So there's 2 parts to the learning analytics, and I guess I would add a third at the administrative level. Our institutional research in department chairs and deans, they're using some of this data to look programmatically. Where in our program are we strong? Where do we need to build up? The courses to help students get through, which courses are bottleneck courses, and where are students struggling, and how can we use these learning analytics to help with student progression and retention. So there's so many levels to applications for this data. It's amazing. It's having the personnel and the time to dig into it. So again, what Karen and Guy's team and their colleague Andrew Davis is a huge part of this. He's not here today, but what they did, that deep dive with David Wiley and their writing instructors, was amazing. That they spent all day just going through questions and trying to improve them. I'd love to see more faculty teams do that. Wow. That's like a dream team, right? I don't know about Lumen. I do know that myself and one of my colleagues, who's our head of academic innovation here at the University of Mississippi, Robert Cummings, we're going to be attending the EEP summit, if you will, at Carnegie Mellon next month. So we'll be there, and we're big fans of Lumen. So if there's any possibility of connecting those two, Bob and I will find a way to do that. You know, it's funny because adaptive learning courseware was developed initially for or online application. A lot of the for-profit universities, they're the early adopters of this technology. So it's interesting. That question's kind of interesting. It kind of almost assumes that they're two separate tracks. But no, you're absolutely right in that the ways that we're using adaptive courseware in face-to-face classes, and that's really what the Gates Foundation grant supports. It's the face-to-face classes. It could be a hybrid, but there's still personal contact with students. I would agree that it seems like for those applications, you're wanting students to do either self-remediation, you're wanting them to get through the content so they can do other things in class, or you're helping them study for exams, for high-stakes exams. And that could be similar to online classes, but different in that, you know, you want to use that face-to-face times. You want to maximize that face-to-face time. You know, in healthcare, they talk about, you know, practicing at the top of your license. I think we want teachers to be able to teach at the top of their training. You know, we're wasting people like Guy and Karen if they have to spend an hour talking about comma placement, right? Because they can do so much more than that. So let the courseware do that, and let them do what they do best. So that's how I would see the difference. I mean, and you know, you could do that in an online classroom. You know, you could flip an online classroom, and you know, when have your synchronous moments or on the discussion board, I suppose you could do these applications and these discussions. But yeah, you're right. I see a difference right now.
Greeno. Associate Director of Learning Platform Services within Academic Technology. That's right, yeah. My team's role was really to support the integration with these different platforms. And so, however, I think that you're making a good point, which is there are a lot of moving parts and pieces that hopefully, ideally, roll up to that strategic plan for the institution, for the university. So ideally, we've got that high level view, and then the support throughout the initiative, both on the pedagogical side, the instructional design side, and so forth. At Oregon State, I did want to plug, and one of you mentioned it, I'm not sure if it was Karen, and a really important component is the fact that the grant is focused on face-to-face courses, and that the active learning component is really critical. And Sarah Clark is very modest about the work their team did with college algebra, but the adaptive learning was an element, but the active learning was super important and a really critical factor in getting to the numbers that they did, which I don't have at top of my hand, but I believe they were something like a 25% reduction in DFW rate for college algebra across the course of the last few years.
I mean, I will say the students love the immediate feedback that they get. And I guess it's through an assessment, but Karen, they're also getting feedback through the Lumen system, right? When they complete certain tasks. And that's an aspect of how you built that they really enjoy. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, so I think that there is the immediacy is part of the things that are at interplay here, and so and this is very common across adaptive learning, but these tools have an ability for an automatically generated messaging system to send a message to a student who's either done super well and is sort of an encouraging keep going message, or who seems to be struggling in certain areas. And in the Lumen platform, you can instructors can modify those to suit what they would like that message to say. And when we first built this project, we really sort of saw that as almost a nothing, almost a throwaway, until students started responding to us in response to those automatically generated messages. And I think once we saw, oh, they're reading this and they're taking it seriously, both, when they're getting sort of a pat on the back, but then also when the courseware is saying to them, it's this area that you seem to be struggling with. Do you want to talk with me about that one-on-one? That prodded our students in ways that we really didn't anticipate. And so the immediacy of that was really key for us. And then I think also it's just absolutely true that, when students sort of get that feedback right away, and you see this even when you're grading their papers, the sooner you can give them back their papers, the more they are engaged with the feedback. So yeah, I would say it's totally key. Yes. Well, I can just speak for our course. In our course, yes, they continue throughout the course. And I think students really come to see them as a natural part of the course. And I think that's really good. That is that they see them as essential help in terms of finishing their projects. And yes, we have gamification crazed instructors in our department too. And yes, they can be used to help that get even crazier in your classroom if you wanted to.
Yeah, and I think that, Lynn, you probably could speak to this more than me, but I know that Grant supports full course integration. So we're really supposed to be using the adaptive courseware throughout an entire course. It's supposed to provide an entire course. Is that what you're doing at Oregon State?
Yeah, for sure. I hope we see really excellent content. So that's a sideways answer to your question. Correct.
Yeah, and I would actually second that. And I would note that for many of our courses, the courseware that we built actually replaced the textbook and became an open educational resource for our students. And I see that as having huge potential, particularly in, I specialize in first year writing, so particularly in those early general education courses that students take.
Yeah, I would say, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, I was just going to build on what both of them said, that I see that as the future, that more and more we're going to see OER paired with adaptive to replace expensive textbooks. And hopefully costs will go down to students. There'll be more access. And if every learner everywhere is successful, and I'm sure they will be, you're going to see adaptive courseware implemented and scaled at 250 more institutions in the next 4 years. I think we sent you a link to the Every Learner Everywhere homepage. So I don't know if we want to provide that. I mean, people could just Google Every Learner Everywhere and it'll come up. They can also keep up with the original grant at the Personalized Learning Consortium website on the APLU. And yeah, someone mentioned the Empirical Educator Project. Or WCET's annual conference. We're there, right?